Another crazy woman losing her mind, killing an innocent man, but she had a terrible past, so it gives us quite some clarification as to why she ended up doing what she did later on in life. Still, it doesn't excuse murdering someone, so today I wanted to share with you the information concerning Katherine Knight. Knight was born and raised in an unconventional and dysfunctional family environment. Her mother, Barbara Thorley, had been married to Jack Ronan and had lived with him in the tiny town of Aberdeen in New South Wales, Hunter Valley. 4 sons were born to the couple before Barbara began an adulterous relationship with Ken Knight, a friend and co-worker of her husband. Both of the families were well known in the conservative rural town, and the affair caused a major scandal. Barbara and her lover, Ken Knight, were forced to leave Aberdeen and moved to Moray, New South Wales. None of her 4 sons went with her. The 2 older boys continued to reside with their father, while the 2 younger sons were sent to be raised by an aunt in Sydney. With her live-in partner, Ken Knight, Barbara had a further 4 children, including a pair of twin girls born in 1955 in Tenterfield, New South Wales. Katherine was the younger of these twin girls. In 1959, when Katherine was 4, her mother's husband, Jack Ronan, died. The 2 boys who had lived with him moved in with Barbara and Ken. Knight's father, Ken, was an alcoholic who openly used violence and intimidation to rape her mother up to 10 times a day. Barbara, in turn, often told her daughters intimate details of her sex life and how much she hated sex and men. Knight claimed she was frequently sexually assaulted by several members of her family, which continued until she was 11. Although they have minor doubts about the details, psychiatrists accept her claim as all her family members confirmed the events did happen. Barbara's great-grandmother was apparently an indigenous Australian from the Moray area who had married an Irishman. She was proud of this fact and liked to think of her own family as Aboriginal. This was kept a family secret, as there was considerable racism in the area at the time, and this was a source of tension for the children. Apart from her twin, the only person whom Knight was close to was her uncle, Oscar Knight, who was a champion horseman. She was devastated when he committed suicide in 1969 and continues to maintain that his ghost visits her. The family moved back to Aberdeen the same year. When she attended Muswell Brook High School, she became a loner and is remembered by classmates as a bully who stood over smaller children. She assaulted at least 1 boy at school with a weapon and was once injured by a teacher who was found to have acted in self-defense. By contrast, when not in rage, Knight was a model student and often earned awards for her good behavior. Upon leaving school at 15 without having learned to read or write, she gained employment as a cutter in a clothing factory. 12 months later, she left to start what she referred to as her dream job, cutting up offal at the local abattoir, where she was quickly promoted and given her own set of butcher knives. At home, she hung the knives over her bed so that they would always be handy if needed, a habit she continued until her incarceration everywhere she lived. Now, to give you an idea, this woman eventually ended up getting life in prison, and it was because she did murder one of her, I guess you could say, boyfriends. But before that occurred, she did have a previous marriage and a few other relationships that already were kind of filled with really weird scenarios of madness, like where you could kind of see something sinister starts growing inside someone's mind and behavior, especially in a relationship when they start to lash out in violent ways. That's exactly what occurred with this woman and her previous, well, ex-husband and boyfriends. Now, Katherine first met David Kellett, a co-worker, in 1973 and completely dominated him. If Kellett got into a fight, Knight would step in and back him up with her fists without fail. In Aberdeen, she was renowned for offering armed combat to anyone who upset her. Knight married Kellett in 1974 at her request, with the couple arriving at the service on her motorcycle with a very intoxicated Kellett on the pillion. As soon as they arrived, Knight's mother, Barbara, gave Kellett some advice. The old girl said to me to watch out. When he says old girl, he means Knight's mother. You better watch this one or she'll fucking kill you. Steer her up the wrong way or do the wrong thing and you're fucked. Don't ever think of playing up on her, meaning cheating on her. She'll fucking kill you." And that was her mother talking. She told me she's got something loose. She's got a screw loose somewhere. Now imagine your own mother telling that about her daughter. That's fucking crazy already, man. On their wedding night, she tried to strangle Khaled. Knight explained it was because he fell asleep after only having intercourse 3 times. Because, you know, having sex 3 times in a row, it's just not enough for a woman like this. You gotta please a woman more often, man. I mean, to the point of literally dying as a man. I guess that's what she wanted. Like, it's so absurd. The marriage was particularly violent, and on one occasion a heavily pregnant Knight burned all of Khaled's clothing and shoes before hitting him across the back of the head with a frying pan. Simply because he had arrived home late from a darts competition after reaching the finals. In fear for his life, he fled before collapsing in a neighbor's house, and he was later treated for a severely fractured skull. Police wanted to charge her, but Knight was now on her best behavior and talked Khaled into dropping the charges. In May 1976, shortly after the birth of their first child, Melissa Ann, Khaled left her for another woman and moved to Queensland, apparently unable to cope with Knight's possessive, violent behavior. The next day, Knight was seen pushing her new baby in a pram down the main street, violently throwing the pram from side to side. Knight was admitted to St. Elmo's Hospital in Tamworth, where she was diagnosed with postnatal depression and spent several weeks recovering. After being released, Knight placed 2-month-old Melissa on a railway line shortly before the train was due, then stole an axe, went into town and threatened to kill several people. A man known in the district as Old Ted, who was foraging near the railway line, found and rescued Melissa, by all accounts only minutes before the train passed. Knight was arrested and again taken to St. Elmo's Hospital, but apparently recovered, signed herself out the following day. A few days later, she slashed the face of a woman with one of her knives and demanded she drive her to Queensland to find Khaled. The woman escaped after they stopped at a service station, but by the time police arrived, Knight had taken a young boy hostage and was threatening him with the knife. She was disarmed when police attacked her with brooms, and she was admitted to Morisset's Psychiatric Hospital. Police attacking a woman with brooms. Did you hear that? Did I read that right? It says on the screen brooms here. This is beautiful. Knight told the nurses she had intended to kill the mechanic at the service station because he had repaired Khaled's car, which had allowed him to leave, and then kill both her husband and his mother when she arrived in Queensland. When police informed Khaled of the incident, he left his girlfriend and moved to Aberdeen with his mother to support Knight. Knight was released on the 9th of August 1976 into the care of her mother-in-law, and along with Khaled, they now moved to Woodridge, a suburb of Brisbane, where she obtained a job at the Dinmore Meat Works in nearby Ipswich. Ipswich? On the 6th of March 1980, they had another daughter, Natasha Murray. In 1984, Knight left Khaled and moved in, first with her parents in Aberdeen, and then to a rented house in nearby Muswellbrook. Although she returned to work at the slaughterhouse, she injured her back the following year and went on a disability pension. No longer needing to rent accommodation close to her work, the government gave her a housing commission house in Aberdeen. And this is where things slowly start to seep into more and more madness for this woman. The signs were already there that something wasn't quite right with her, but there were still men out there who felt attracted enough to her to want to date her, and this ultimately cost one person his life. But before we get into that, let me just share a few of these details of previous relationships leading up to the actual relationship murder scenario. Knight met 38-year-old minor David Saunders in 1986. A few months later, he moved in with her and her 2 daughters, although he kept his old apartment. Knight soon became jealous regarding what he did when she was not around and would often throw him out. He would move back to his apartment and then she would invariably follow and beg him to return. In May 1987, she cut the throat of his 2-month-old dingo pup in front of him, for no more reason than as an example of what would happen if he ever had an affair, before going on to knock him unconscious with a frying pan. In June 1988, she gave birth to her 3rd daughter, Sarah, which prompted Saunders to put up a deposit on a house, which Knight paid off when her workers' compensation came through in 1989. Knight decorated the house throughout with animal skins, skulls, horns, rusty animal traps, leather jackets, old boots, machetes, rakes and pitchforks. No space, including the ceilings, was left uncovered. After an argument where she hit Saunders in the face with an iron before stabbing him in the stomach with a pair of scissors, he moved back to his own place, but when he later returned home found she had cut up all of his clothes. Saunders took long service leave and went into hiding. Knight tried to find him, but no one admitted to knowing his whereabouts. Several months later, he returned to see his daughter and found that Knight had gone to the police and unjustly told them she was afraid of him. They issued her an apprehended violence order against him. So there we have the second relationship that went down into complete madness and insanity. Luckily, this man also survived. In 1990, Knight became pregnant by a 43-year-old farmer, slaughterhouse co-worker John Chillingworth, and gave birth the following year to a boy they named Eric. Their relationship lasted 3 years before she left him for a man she had been having an affair with for some time, John Price. Now, John Price is also the person she ended up murdering, but I do want to point out, she kept threatening her own boyfriends and husbands, whatever, that they shouldn't cheat on her, but then you hear it, and then this woman had a relationship and had an affair with someone else. She was doing the very thing that she didn't want men doing to her. What a fucking hypocritical piece of shit. John Charles Thomas Price was the father of 3 children when Knight had an affair with him. Reputedly a terrific bloke, liked by everyone who knew him. His own marriage had ended in 1988. While his 2-year-old daughter had remained with his former wife, the 2 older children lived with him. Price was well aware of Knight's violent reputation and she moved into his house in 1995. His children liked her, he was making a lot of money working in the local mines, and apart from violent arguments, at first, life was a bunch of roses. In 1998, they had a fight over Price's refusal to marry her, and in retaliation, Knight videotaped items he had stolen from work and sent the tape to his boss. Although the items were out of date medical kits that he had scavenged from the company rubbish tip, Price was fired from the job he held for 17 years. That same day he kicked her out and she returned to her own home, while news of what she had done spread through town. A few months later, Price restarted a relationship, although he now refused to allow her to move in with him. The fighting became even more frequent and most of his friends would no longer have anything to do with him while they remained together. If only he had backed out of the relationship for real permanently by now, because the signs are leading up to something absolutely tragic for this man and his own daughters. Then again, I guess it must also be kind of tragic for Katherine Knight's own children that her mother has done what she did, you know? It's fucked up. In February 2000, a series of assaults on Price culminated with Knight stabbing Price in the chest. Finally fed up, he kicked her out of his house. On the 29th of February, he stopped at the magistrate's court on his way to work and took out a restraining order in an attempt to keep her away from both him and his children. That afternoon, Price told his co-workers that if he did not come to work the next day, it would be because Knight had killed him. They pleaded with him not to go home, but he told them that he believed she would kill his children if he did not. Price arrived home to find that Knight, although not there herself, had sent the children away for a sleepover at a friend's house. He then spent the evening with his neighbors before returning home and going to bed at 11 p.m. Earlier that day, Knight had bought a new black lingerie and had videotaped all her children while making comments, which have since been interpreted as crude will. Sheens. I said sheens, I mean sins, but it's fucking crazy. So much narration going on for this one video, isn't it? Then in the past I asked you guys, do you like long narrations? Yeah, we like long narrations, but it actually is very, very crazy for someone like me who isn't even English to narrate long times in a row. But what am I doing with my life anyway? Running a channel of this nature. Knight later arrived at Price's house while he was sleeping and sat watching TV for a few minutes before having a shower. She then woke Price and they had sex. Some hard sex, man. After which he fell asleep. At 6 a.m. the next day, the neighbor became concerned that Price's car was still in the driveway, and when Price did not arrive at work, his employer sent a worker to see what was wrong. Both the neighbor and worker tried knocking on Price's bedroom window to wake him, but after noticing blood on the front door, alerted the police, who arrived at 8 a.m. Breaking down the back door, police found his body, with Knight comatose from taking a large number of pills. She had stabbed Price with a butcher's knife while he was sleeping. According to the blood evidence, he awoke and tried to turn the light on before attempting to escape, while Knight chased him through the house. He managed to open the front door and get outside, but either stumbled back inside or was dragged back into the hallway, where he finally died after bleeding out. Later, Knight went into Aberdeen and withdrew $1,000 from Price's ATM account. Price's autopsy revealed that he had been stabbed at least 37 times in both the front and back of his body, with many of the wounds extending into vital organs. Several hours after Price had died, Knight skinned him and hung the skin from a meat hook of a door to the laundroom. She then decapitated him and cooked parts of his body, serving up the meat with baked potato, pumpkin, beetroot, courgette, cabbage, yellow squash and gravy in 2 settings at the dinner table, along with notes besides each plate, each having the name of one of Price's children on it. She was preparing to serve his body parts to his children. A third meal was thrown on the back lawn for unknown reasons, and it is speculated Knight had attempted to eat it but could not, and this has been put forward in support of her claim that she has no memory of the crime. Price's head was found in a pot with vegetables. The pot was still warm, estimated to be at between 40 and 50 Celsius, indicating that the cooking had taken place in the early morning. Sometime later, Knight arranged the body with the left arm draped over an empty 1.25-liter soft drink bottle with the legs crossed. This was claimed in court to be an act of defilement, demonstrating Knight's contempt for Price. Knight had left a handwritten note on top of a photograph of Price, blood-stained and covered with small pieces of flesh. The note read, "Time got you back, Jonathan, for raping my daughter. You two back for Russ, for Little John. Now play with Little John's dick, John Price." The accusations in the note were found to be groundless, and the note itself seems to be written by someone that is obviously mentally insane, because it makes no sense what it actually said. Do you understand what I just read over there? You two back for Russ, for Little John. Now play with Little John's dick, John Price. Who even writes like that? It sounds absolutely retarded. And this is pretty much all there is to the case of this woman, because after she committed this murder, she eventually got life imprisonment. So I don't want to go over the trial itself, because it's always fucking boring. Because it's always, no, I'm not guilty. Yes, you are. No, I'm not guilty. It's always the fucking same with all these perpetrators, right? You just have to know that this woman eventually was sentenced to life in prison, and that is where she is to this day. By now, she would be somewhere in her 60s. So, it's said that her children and the children of John Price have to go through life without a mother and a father in this case. But that's what you get with psychopaths that are roaming the streets. I mean, there were so many signs with this woman that something was clearly wrong with her. Still, men would date her and even have sex with her. These are the sorts of women we men have to stay away from, but likewise you women have to stay away from men that will be like this as well, because they are out there too, so stay safe. As always, dear viewer, have sweet dreams.